Hi everyone, I'm sitting here and I'm editing pictures of gorgeous Anna. As you can see here on the left, we have some pictures of her. She doesn't look a day over 35. And I just want to show you a really quick way to edit skin in Camera Raw, which is a part of Bridge, and Bridge is a part of Photoshop. Now, if you buy Photoshop, you get both Bridge and Camera Raw. And Camera Raw is sort of the baby program to Photoshop, and you just pre-edit pictures and do some color correction in Bridge. At least I do. And it just makes the workflow so much easier and faster. Anyway, to retouch skin and make it look softer and more magazine-ish when you edit portraits, first and foremost you have to open it up in Bridge, and then you open it up in Camera Raw, and then the picture, that is. Choose your picture, open it up in Bridge, open it up in Camera Raw, and then you press either K on the keyboard or you press this adjustment brush icon right here. And then a panel appears to the right. You go down to clarity, and then you go down to between 30 and 50, depending on how much softness you want to the skin. It's gonna stay around there, feels good. And then you go down to the size and you choose a small size on the brush, because if you go big size, you will lose control of what it is that you're actually editing and everything will become blurry, and that is not okay. So I'm gonna pick size 4, which is usually what I pick when I edit skin. And then when you want to soften skin and keep the skin texture, because you see that she has texture here on her skin, and since it's a portrait and it's not a fashion portrait, it's job related and personal use portrait, then what we want to do is just soften the skin a little bit and not lose the texture or the wrinkles either, because that's her. We just want to soften it up and make it more appealing in that way. So what I do is that I just pick a starting point, which when I click somewhere with a new brush, this little pin will appear, and that's your starting point. And then I just start to blur the highlights like this. And just keep on blurring the highlights. The reason I do not blur the whole face and just the highlights is because when you blur just the highlights, it's a sort of an illusion. It doesn't look that much retouched as if you would retouch and blur out the shadows, because there's so much depth and there's so much texture in shadows that if you would blur that out, everything would just look really fake. That could be really pretty too, but in this case we don't want to do that. So first and foremost, what I always do, no matter what kind of pictures I edit when it comes to portraits, is that I blur out the highlights a little bit. Now it doesn't do a lot of difference, but it does a little bit of a difference, and that's a lot for the person that is in the picture, because we all know how we have things that we don't like about ourselves, and to soften it up makes it look more appealing. And now I'm just going through the before and after, and as you can see, everything became so much softer, and it does do a lot of difference. And what I do after I edit the first layer, so to say, because all of these different pins you can say are layers, like you do in Photoshop. And to add a new pin, you just press N on the keyboard, or you press this little icon right here. And you start all over again, and you start to blur the highlights. Now the reason I do this twice is because you don't want to lose control. It's easy to lose control when you edit and you just go crazy with the clarity, -100, and everything will become really blurry immediately. But if you do that, as I said, you will lose skin texture too much and you will lose control, and it will just really fake. So we do 2 rounds of blurring out the highlights, and you can't Command J this. You can't copy this action in Bridge so that everything just becomes duplicate, but that's good because This is more of a fine-tuning when you have to do everything manually, even if it's almost identically the same action you're doing. So we don't want to blur the parts such as the eyes. Apparently you want those to be sharp. The mouth. The nose, well, not the contour of the nose and the shadowy parts. We want to keep that. But we want to soften the highlights, and there's a lot of highlights on the nose. And this part here, never ever ever want to soften or blur out, because this gives an umph to the picture, so to say. The jawline, it really defines the face and makes it look so much more real, which we want to keep. We actually want to add some shadow to this. That's usually what I do to the jawline. Anyway, that's how you retouch skin. And that's how you make it softer. You just pick your picture, open it up in Camera Raw, press the K on your keyboard or the adjustment brush icon, go down to clarity, and then just put the indicator between 30 to 50, and then a small size on the brush. Feather the flow to density. The flow to density I usually have between, 50 to 80, depending on the situation. And the feather, I have pretty high feather always, but I always have a small size on the brush. And using the auto mask is not ideal for this case when you blur skin, because, well, it's not going to algorithm with that, but it's better to not have the auto mask. And show mask, well, that's optional. I just think it's in the way when you edit. And show pin I always do, because then you can just alternate between two different highlight points that you've blurred, as you can see. So let's take a look at the before and after and see if there's any difference. And as you can see, there's a big difference. But we still have the skin texture there underneath, and you can see it, and it does look really pretty. Let's just zoom this out. Command 0, and let's press preview here. You can press P on your keyboard. You can just press preview. As you can see, let me remove the pins here. It does do a lot of difference. And she still looks like a person. So that's pretty. And now, of course, if you want to, you can remove these wrinkles here. But while I was taking pictures of her, she was a person that smiled a lot. And when you smile, you get wrinkles. And if you remove that, it looks weird. So we have to consider that too, and not just edit. So that's how you edit the skin in Camera Raw. If you have any questions, do ask, leave comments, and spread the word. Okay, my throat was killing me.